Welcome to Bears on Tap, hosted by Kyle Juice Michalski, Quinten Krzysko, Sunny Verma, and the one and only Ron Luce. Bringing you all the news, analysis, and opinions on the charter franchise, Chicago Bears.
The Chicago Bears fall to 4-4 in about the most, I don't want to say devastating, but like the most painful way possible this weekend. Fall to 0-4 on the road this season. At this point, Matt Eberflus, by my quick tally before the show, so you might want to fact check this, but 3-17 on the road in his career as a head coach now. Just, Sonny, it's not that they lost. In the preseason preview, I had them losing this game. I said Arizona's a tough place to play. It's a well-coached team. They're a tough team who's going to fight tooth and nail. I think they might drop this one. It's the way they lost it. It's losing by, what is that, 3 scores? Not being competitive the entire second half? I mean, we'll get into all of it. My name is Quinten Krzysko. I am joined by Sunny Verma. We are Bears on Tap. We're here to do the post-game show for the Bears Cardinals game that we all just suffered through. Sunny, how are you feeling right now?
Q, this is torture. Where's Ron? Okay, last week I had to watch the opposite of this game, where basically we were in it till the very end and we lose it in the most heartbreaking fashion ever. And you don't show up for that post game.
Hey, that's been on the schedule since before the season started.
Hold on. I need to see the schedule. Now, today, we have arguably an even more demoralizing loss, and Ron is gone, and here I am showing up like a dummy again. Is this like a new host hazing going on all of a sudden here at On Tap Sports that you guys are making me deal with this absolute torture of a season?
Yeah, it is. We actually got the script from the NFL before the season started. Said we're going to throw this on Sunny real good.
It's rough, Q. Again, it's I know you said like we lost in the worst way, but it's like back to back we lost in different fashions, and it's just so incredibly demoralizing at this point. I don't know which loss I feel worse about. I think this one because. Those of you who tuned in last week, I was very emotional. We threw everything out the window and we just wanted to vent a little bit. Whereas today, instead of the anger I felt last week, I just feel sad today. I really have the idea and the impression that all the optimism that this fan base had collectively for the season, with all the talent that's on this roster is gone out the window. This is ending up being the same type of Bears season that we've watched for 90% of our lives.
Right. Like, I mean, let me put it this way. 2 years ago, it was like, okay, it might be a little revived, but like you looked at this roster, you're like, they're not going to be good. So it was easy for me to sit there and pay attention to development, pay attention to, little things that could get me through to them being competitive. Last year, I was hoping they'd be competitive, but right off the bat, week 1, you got a pretty good idea that wasn't happening. Week 2, you knew, like after week 2, it was like, this ain't going to work. This isn't going to be working. And by the end of week 3 last year, I was all aboard the train of Eberflus is gone. We're going to get the number 1 pick. That's how bad Carolina looked. You're getting Caleb Williams. You got to line this timeline up. Heck, I was overboard. I was like, if you are getting the number 1 quarterback, this kid who is being preached about as this incredible prospect, you want the GM aligned with the head coach, aligned with the quarterback, get rid of Poles, get rid of Flus, and reset this whole thing. Make sure you get it right. It might not be fair to them, and I don't care because all that I care about is making sure you get it right for this quarterback. And now we are sitting here in this situation that I so desperately was hoping they would avoid of, well, kid, sorry, we're throwing away your first year. Development's out the like development. Sure, you might develop a little. Maybe you'll even develop some bad habits if you're lucky. But you know what? We're gonna get Ben Johnson for you next year, or maybe we'll even do something so nice as your buddy Cliff Kingsbury. He's looking pretty good in Washington. Maybe we'll hire Cliff. I don't think Ben Johnson's a guarantee. I think it's nice, pretty. It's a good thing to think about, but like at the end of the day, you are throwing out a year of Caleb's rookie contract, his development. You're setting his timeline back, and that just it sucks. It just sucks. I can't sit here and in good faith after this game say, man, I hope Eberflus can turn this thing around like I have the last few weeks. Like that feels out the window after this game where there's what 20, 30 seconds, 26 seconds left in the half. You're down by 5 going in the half with the ball back, and you drop the ball again. You give up a touchdown run in 26 seconds. You let the Cardinals go 70 yards. Like anyone who's used to this show does not see me this animated very often. Like that was utterly unforgivable from a coaching perspective, from a player on the field perspective, that you're in prevent defense. Who said he brought some heat there? That almost makes me feel worse because it makes me feel like Eberflus is listening to us, listening to everyone on a podcast, everyone writing an article saying like, why was TJ Edwards spying there, and saying, okay, well, I got to do the opposite now. And it's like, be you, right?
Well,
Nagy always said, do what you believe you're supposed to do there. Don't give up a touchdown doing something that you don't believe in, that your players aren't versed in. And it's on the players too. They're the ones who let it happen. But at the end of the day, you're talking about players who have a coach that I don't feel like they believe in anymore, that they don't think he's putting them in the best position to succeed. Sonny, you had something to say. I kept going. I was ranting. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to crack a joke. You talking about him being, listening to podcasters, and I was just going to say that, maybe he's trying to start the research early on what he's going to be doing at this point next year, anyway, on his own little podcast. But, I agree with you. And I was texting a good friend of mine earlier today where I talked about like when you're rebuilding, the past couple of years at this point, all I ever wanted was the Bears to compete. But then ultimately, if you lost at the end, I was okay with it because that meant that you were going to get that high draft pick and you're trying to get that elusive franchise quarterback. Normally, after seeing what I saw today, I would switch my mindset to that. But that makes me feel so incredibly dirty because of those expectations I had this year. We have that quarterback now, and I don't think anything has changed. I really love what I saw from Rome Odunze today. I think we have a star in the making at that wide receiver spot. Now, essentially what I'm hoping for is to basically, as I mentioned before, just reset the clock again to fast forward through the season so we can hire a new coaching staff, to hire a new offensive coordinator, go have Caleb go through this process all over again. And it's deja vu. This was supposed to be different this year. This team has more talent at the skill positions than at any point in my 40 years as a Chicago Bears fan. And yet here I am, what are we, 7-8 games in, and I'm at the same spot that I've been in every year previous to this. This is torture, Q. This is hard. Like being a Bears fan, one of the most storied franchises in the league, a historic franchise. This shouldn't be this hard. Why is it so hard? Tell me, Q. You're the smart one. Why is it so hard?
I mean, in my mind, this game went off the rails when Arizona realized the Bears couldn't stop the run. Right?
Yeah.
So to me, at that point, it comes down to some roster construction issues with your lack of depth on at the defensive tackle spot. But at the same time, Arizona's defensive line is way worse than the Bears, even with the injuries the Bears had. Like, I want to pull this up. Oh, that's the wrong graphic. Excuse me. I want to pull this up. This is not a good defensive line. So if it's about Montez Sweat wasn't out there And you saw Andrew Billings got hurt, which is
Right.
big, which does equalize. But this was all happening before Billings got hurt. You still have like they're doing this with former Bears legend Kyrus Tonga. Dante Stills, who was a 6th-round pick. I like Dante Stills. He's not a run stuffer. He's a passing down 3-tech maybe, or a 5-tech, like a hybrid defensive tackle. Zaven Collins, Victor Demekajay, I think, and LJ Collier went down for them. Like, so if it's about not having the talent on the defensive line to stop the run, why couldn't the Bears run so well on the Cardinals? You know, like, so I'm sitting here going, I just keep coming back to coaching of like, I do not think I look at the Arizona Cardinals roster. I look at their investment at these spots. Paris Johnson Jr., number 5 overall pick. Awesome. I love Paris. Very similar to Darnell Wright from an investment standpoint at the position, right? Like Bears invested in Darnell Wright. They invested in PJJ. Similar concepts. I think PJJ is a higher level player, but they're close. Evan Brown at left guard. Can anyone honestly tell me Evan Brown is a higher level investment than Tevin Jenkins, even though Jenkins gets hurt? He's out there playing right now. Evan Brown was he's a low level free agent. Jalt Froholt probably beats Coleman Shelton. I'll give you that one. Tristan Colon at right guard. That's equal to Matt Pryor, probably. Kelvin Beachum at right tackle. If we want to say Braxton Jones on the other side or Larry Borum, I don't think it's a giant drop off in that talent level there. So, like, I'm going, their O-line investment, very similar to the Bears. Their D-line investment is clearly less than the Bears. Skill positions, Bears is much higher. Running backs, similar. Linebackers, Bears is much higher. Secondary, you could argue secondary, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson back there. But, like, Bears have Kevin Byard that they invested, Jaquan Brisker, 2nd-round pick back there. He wasn't playing today, so I'll give you that. But in the cornerback spot, Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson. I mean, the Bears are the more talented team here, and they got the doors blown off.
What's the point of having Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet as your offensive weapons, and you go up against the 24th ranked defense in the league, and you don't score a single touchdown? Did Cole Kmet have a single target today?
I don't think so.
I don't recall a single time the ball was thrown in his direction.
To be fair, I checked out in the 4th quarter. I just wasn't paying attention anymore. But like,
it's again, you know.
Yeah, Gerald Everett had 1 target. Cole Kmet had 0.
Just fire him.
Keenan Allen had 10.
And he wasn't good today. And he wasn't very good today. And, you know, there's some questions about, you know, Keenan Allen moving forward. It's just, you know, Rome had a very good game. Outside that, even Torrey Taylor, you know, like even, I don't know. It's just God. One of those where,
yeah. I texted you guys, like after that, the safety, Bears take a safety.
Q, what did I text you right before that safety happened?
I don't know.
I literally.
Oh yeah, you said this is about to be a safety.
This is about to be a safety. I'm like, I saw the way this game was going, and I was like, hold up, we have the ball at the 1 yard line. I see where this is going, and I'm like, gentlemen, boys, here comes a safety. What happens? Not only do we get a safety, we don't get a safety in the traditional sense, where we just get tackled in the end zone. We have a penalty called against us in the end zone. Like, we can't even get a safety correctly. It's our coaching, our lack of coaching gets us a safety. I just don't know. Like, at this point, you know, we all, you know, felt the positive, you know, like just coming into the season, we wanted to give Eberflus a shot. But this game is the perfect example of it's just time to cut bait. You know, I really think that a lot of the team may have, during this past week, after that last, you know, the way the game ended against the Commanders, we listened to all the post-game press conferences where the players themselves were kind of questioning things, and you kind of got the vibe like, wait, you know, these guys are kind of questioning the coaching staff. And then, you have this whole Stevenson drama, which, what happened exactly, we're not exactly sure. How are they going to punish it? Or the team captains met and they decided this and that. It's just not a well-run football team. And, I'm not saying get rid of Poles, because I do think that there's roster improvement on the team, but he's tried the cheap route with the offensive line. Okay, we've tried it. We've tried to go the value route for a couple seasons now. It doesn't work. Listen, Ryan Poles, I know you're a subscriber to On Tap Sports. I know you're going to watch this right before you go to bed today. Spend the money. Get the right guys up there. You have a very good young quarterback who, let's be honest, hasn't had a great couple of games now. You don't want to see him all of a sudden take steps back. You want to, the whole point of the season is to get him ready to get you to the point where you can win a Super Bowl. The progression was there, game by game, at the beginning of the year. But I'd argue the last couple of games, he hasn't played all that well. And the offensive line has him looking like he's trying to be Justin Fields in the backfield. We can't do this to him. Like, I can't do this anymore, Q.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing with that. And people don't believe me when I say this. The Bears O-line talent is fine. It's not good, but it's not as bad as the results that you're seeing on the field. What we're seeing on the field is a poorly coached unit whose play caller, I don't think, understands what they are and aren't capable of, and asks them to consistently do things that, one, they can't do, and two, I don't think they have the reps together. I don't think that they have the practice time together. I don't know what on earth they're doing to be this discombobulated, but we just went through the Cardinals O-line. I think the talent's very similar. Why wasn't the Cardinals O-line having the issues the Bears O-line was? Because they're better coached. They're better prepared. They know what they're doing. They know their job consistently, and they execute it. How do you execute things? Preparation, time studying it, and reps. I don't think the practice is going in for these guys. I don't think whatever they're doing in practice is not working, and they need to figure something out better to make this O-line work, because you should have a plan to make it work better than what we've seen from the Bears all year on their O-line. We see O-lines across the league missing talent, missing guys, have backups in there. How many times have we seen it with the Packers?
Yeah.
Where they're missing 2-3 starters and they manage just fine. There's something deeper here. I think there's something within Hallis Hall. I don't know if it's a culture. I don't know what it is that does not put the necessary emphasis on offensive coaching, or doesn't give the necessary resources to the offensive players or the offensive coaching. Maybe it's as simple as there's not any guys in the building who have ever been part of a good offensive line. So the habits aren't there. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm running out of reasons to look at this O-line and say, I don't even know what to say. Like, there isn't a reason for them to be this bad. There just is not. And bringing new guys in, sure, it feels nice. I don't know that it solves the issue unless you're bringing in all pro caliber guys, and they don't hit the market very often.
Didn't Ryan Poles play on the line?
Yeah, he played. He
Right.
was at the Bears practice squad.
So it's just one of those, like, if someone should know, it's the guy who's constructing the roster.
Mm-hmm.
It's the guy, like, he's the one who's making these hires. He it all starts and ends with him at this point. We can all, take the easy way out and, always blame the ownership for everything. But, Ryan Poles was one of the most popular guys during the offseason, during the HBO show. We all were, pumping our fists in appreciation for him and how great he looked.
Mm-hmm.
But now, listening to what you just said and, thinking that there might be an absence of recognition of what it takes to, be a good lineman and finding good coaches.
Well, I think it's across the whole offense.
Right. Well, who's in charge of that? And again, I'm giving him I'm not ready to move on from Ryan Poles yet. I'm not going to say the same for the rest of them. The rest of them, for me, and I hate that I'm even here, that we're only here, what, week 9, week 10, whatever. I've lost track at this point. But I'm willing to give Ryan Poles one more chance to prove, one more off season. But if I can see it, Q, if all of us dumb podcasters can see it, how can he not? He needs to stop trying to be the smartest guy in the room and just be the smartest guy in the room. Stop trying to find, trying to be outsmart other GMs and finding the value guys here and there. Last offseason, we had more cap room than anybody else in the league. Mm-hmm. We had one of the most ideal situations when it came to draft picks and salary cap. And he had earned that through his shrewd moves over the last couple of years. And it's because of those moves over the past couple of years that, we had such positive thoughts about him. But at this point, can you even argue that he's fumbled it? Having that ideal of a situation, and here we are right now, halfway through the year, ready to basically want to start over. What's the point of building one of the most talented offensive teams you've ever had? Not just offensive. I'm not even talking about skill positions. Our defense had a string of almost a season straight without giving up 21 points. Mm-hmm. A very solid defense. And yet here we are for the second week in a row now saying, shut it down. That we're ready to move on. It's time to hit the reset button again. Again, I'm going to give him one more year, one more offseason. But the spotlight's on Ryan at this point.
I almost wonder, I think, because I was talking about culture, right, in the building and like guys who understand how to make stuff work when the talent isn't working right? Like you look at the Sean McVays of the world, the good coaches of the world who are taking chicken shit and turning it into chicken salad, right? Like making stuff just happen because, you got Sean Payton with Bo Nix at quarterback. He's doing something with it though, right? Like that team has plenty of issues on their roster.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for guys who come from winning organizations and bring in a problem-solving mentality and that ability to, or not ability, but the knowledge of being able to predict, how are these teams going to attack you? How are they going to look at your roster and say, okay, well, this is the weak spot we can attack, and here's how we problem solve that to mitigate it. And I don't know that the Bears have anyone in their building who does that well, who brings that thought process to it. And I almost feel like Kevin Warren at the top might bring a little bit more of that, like that devil's advocate in the room of like, well, but then this, and then how are you going to do this? And creates the conversation around it. But to me, it feels like a team who doesn't have that conversation of mitigating stuff. They just expect to win playing their game. And that's just not the way that football works. You can't, unless you have outrageous talent advantage, you can't just play winning your game all the time. You need to go with the ebbs and flows. You need to go with the punches of stuff. And it's the guy who's left standing at the end of the 16 rounds who wins the game. And I just keep ending up back there of like, it always feels like inexperience within this building. And you don't see GMs get second chances, right? It's hard to say you go hire a GM who has a background in the league, because most of the guys who don't have jobs for a reason. Mm-hmm. But like what I keep coming back to this, Ryan Pace was a super young GM who they were like, we're going to bring him in. He's going to learn on the job. He's going to get better every year. And Ryan Poles was supposed to be the same way, right? And Phil Emery before that was the more experienced guy, but Phil Emery just ended up being a bust all around. But I wish there was some type of consultant they could bring in or something that's not Bill Polian, because Lord knows we've been down that a million times. But like maybe that is Kevin Warren in the building who's setting the tone up top. But to me, there is just such a aspect of just maintaining the status quo that comes down from the top of the Bears. And it ends up in this situation of, we spent the last 3 years essentially tanking in one way or another. And that tanking breeds losing within a building. It does. And it's something it's a stink that is hard to wash off you. You look at the Detroit Lions for years. You look at the Cleveland Browns. Once you enter tank territory, it is hard to wash that stink off you. It's the only way to go get that top quarterback most of the time. But it's something that if it's a multi-year cycle, it is really hard to get rid of that once it enters your building. It's like someone throws a dead fish in a trash can. No one notices it for a week. You're stuck with that smell for years now. Like, they need to hire a coach or a consultant or a GM or something. And this is talking in the offseason at this point, which is still a long way away. But like, someone who knows how to get that stink off, someone who's experienced it in one way or another, which maybe that's Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell turned that thing around with Ben Johnson at OC, but like, I'm rambling at this point, and I'm sorry for that, but that stink is hard to get rid of, and I think we're seeing some of that right now.
It's just unfortunate because it's hard to build a good NFL Super Bowl capable winning football team, and as you mentioned, even when we wipe things out and hire a new coaching staff next year, and you know what? We start Caleb Williams' clock. He's got to learn a brand new offense, this and that. How long is Jalen Johnson going to be arguably the top cover corner in the league? It's like we have we have assets. Sweat. Billings is having a really good season. I just mentioned Jalen Johnson. It's like we have the type of pieces that every football team is dreaming of to build a Super Bowl contender. We have those. We have an up-and-coming young quarterback. We have 3 really solid, I'll just say baseline, solid wide receivers. We just gave good money to a tight end who I think is top 10 in the NFL. That top 10 tight end had 0 targets today.
After what, 1 last week?
Right. Like, what are we doing? It's like every time we're strong in one end, all of a sudden we have a glaring weakness in the other. And at what point? It's just tough because, again, we can bring in a new coaching staff. Sure, fine. We can bring in someone who may be more established here and there. But that guy's going to have to rebuild his defense. And by the time he's done rebuilding that defense, Caleb's contract might be coming up. And now all of a sudden we have a boatload of other problems that we're going to have to deal with. Ryan Poles was given a gift. Some of it earned, some of it, through his own shrewd trading. Don't get me wrong. But right now, it's hard for me to say anything but he squandered it. And that's just so incredibly demoralizing. I don't think outside maybe 4 or 5, I don't think there's another franchise who wouldn't have traded places with us the past couple of years just because of the assets we had and the flexibility that we had. And we've done nothing with it.
Yeah, and it's, to your point, new coaches, bring in new systems, bring in new scheme fits, new players. Tyreek Stevenson might not fit the next D coordinator system. Like the next offensive coordinator might not think DeAndre Swift is a fit for what he does. Those are the conversations that end up happening. And you know what? You won't know it until week 8. Because you'll be sitting there going, why the hell is DeAndre Swift only getting 5 touches a game, 10 touches a game? This guy was getting 20 plus last year. He's doing stuff with it. And that's when you find out, oh, well, that's because you look at this old coordinator's history. That's not his type of running back. That's not. And because the offense coordinator will probably be a QB coach or like a coach from something else that hasn't actually established what he likes to do. But in an interview, the interview process, he wants to go from making $70,000 a year to 200. Yeah, I love DeAndre Swift. That's my guy. Like we can make it work. And then in training camp, this ain't going to work with this guy. we got to go get Joe Schmo more touches because that's my kind of running back. Like that's the stuff that you run into when you talk about switching staffs. Like it's not. I harp on the impact of the quarterback, but it's the impact of the total roster development too. Of like stuff is going to change. That's one of the reasons it was so important to me to open your development window for the quarterback here with clear eyes on what your roster is going to be, because you got 5 years before you have to that cap hit goes way up for Caleb, assuming that he pans out, which I still believe he's going to. It wasn't a good game for him today, but actually no. Let's jump into that. Let's jump into the offensive performance today, because we've harped enough on the coaching, we've harped some on the defense, but like, how do you think Caleb did today?
Q, I know you've watched a lot more of his tape, his all 22s from college than I have. I did watch him a good bit in college just because, my day job is covering college sports, but he hasn't solved this deep passing thing yet. Like, I mean, early on in the season, we came on after the game and, we talked about, hey, it'll eventually correct itself. That he has a history of connecting on those passes. We're halfway through his rookie year now, Q. I guess I don't know what, for me, it's like I'm getting less and less confident as the week goes by. And I think maybe that's why I have this level of frustration here today, because is that coaching? I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with, but the guy was doing it. This wasn't considered a weakness of his coming into this year. And the fact that like he's simply missing, like there's one throw, I forget who, I think he threw it to Keenan Allen in the end zone, but he had DJ Moore about 5 yards short of him, who could have walked into the end zone. He just flat out missed that throw.
Yeah, he was just that. This is Keenan's ball. That's what that.
Right.
We got one-on-one with Keenan. We're going to Keenan.
So again, for me, it's just like I haven't lost faith. Okay, I think Robert Schmitz had a tweet earlier today where he talked about out of 10 being the most concerned, 1 being the least concerned. He was like 0.5 for when it came to Caleb Williams. I'm not saying it's 7 or 8. What I'm saying is it's probably at like 3 now.
Yeah.
Whereas early on in the year, it was at 0.5.
After the London game, it was like, this guy's it.
Right. Exactly. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not even saying I'm doubting him, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that doubt isn't creeping in.
Mm-hmm. I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, this whole week I've been talking in back channels and like, group chats and stuff with friends of mine about like these deep passing numbers are not pretty. They are not pretty, and we are entering halfway through the season, and it's getting harder and harder for me to write it off. And I'm getting responses about like Joe Burrow was a brutal deep passer his rookie year, right? Josh Allen was booty when throwing the deep ball his rookie year. So like, and the saving grace to me is Caleb has the arm talent, right? He has the arm strength. He has the talent to get the ball out in weird arm angles with a ton of velocity. Like the capability is all there. But again, this brings me somewhat to having to change offensive systems from year 1 to year 2. Instead of spending that time working with a throwing coach on perfecting that deep ball, Caleb's going to be spending that time learning a new offense. It's where your time is going to, and that's something that will limit your change from year 1 to year 2. But I don't ultimately worry about Caleb physically, his ability to place the ball anywhere on the field. That will come in my mind as long as the work's getting put in. If there's anything that I do worry a little bit more about, it's the mental process of it. Whether, someone gets the yips on the deep ball, you start to, right now, it almost feels like he's aiming it too much, right? Like he's overthinking every deep throw, and that's leading to the inaccuracies, which I do think some of that comes back to Eberflus with the It wasn't 200 club this year. What was it? It was because last year was 200 club with Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 200 yard or 2 touchdowns, 0 sacks, 0 turnovers. This year for Caleb, I forget what they said it on Hard Knocks. It was something very similar. Oh, end every possession with a kick, a punt, an extra point, or a field goal. And I don't think that that's the ideal thing to be drilling into a rookie's head, because I think that he's overthinking the deep ball of like, this is risky. That guy might be able to get there. I got to put it where either receiver gets it or nobody gets it. And it's consistently where nobody gets it. So, like, I hope that they lose, I don't know. I just hate that mentality with a rookie quarterback. I hate that mentality when we're trying to grow a kid into, I want him throwing everything, right? Like, I want him learning what he can and can't hit, because I trust his ability to put the football on a dime through a keyhole wherever he wants it. But it's just a question of where he can fit it and learning that. And I don't think he's learning that right now. I think what he's learning is the limits of his receivers to break, to beat, to just like, boom, hit on a dime. Like, I'm going to go faster now. I think that's all he's learning, because he's putting the ball too deep on them consistently. Now, maybe I'm projecting my worries onto Eberflus with that. Who knows? We won't find out until years down the road. Right. It took Josh Allen 2 years to figure out his deep ball. Joe Burrow, his second year, it went off like crazy. There are other examples of quarterbacks who struggled. Right now, Caleb's near the bottom of that list, though. He's like right there at the bottom. But so was Burrow and Allen. Again, he has the talent. We saw him do it in college. I have to go back to that. But the mental aspect is something that does worry me a little bit.
Which is wild, because like when you thought of Caleb Williams and you watched, once it was pretty obvious we were going to get the number 1 overall pick and Caleb Williams was going to be the guy that we're going to draft, you watched every interview with Caleb. And the one thing you really didn't doubt was him mentally. Like, it seemed like since middle school, if not earlier, he had always been preparing himself to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And even when he was going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, he immediately set his own bar, aligning himself with Tom Brady, saying, he wanted to have more Super Bowl wins than Tom. For me, what I'm worried about, and I'm kind of doubling down on it this week, is he has heard all the whispers this past week about this coaching staff. He's in that locker room when a lot of these team captains are, kind of having their own meetings and, trying to figure out what to do with certain personnel and, just kind of taking control of the culture from the coaching staff, who doesn't seem like they know how to handle it. What I'm worried about is when you have a quarterback that talented, what you want him to do is to feel confident that he's growing with the coaching staff, that he trusts the coaching staff to put him in the right position to be better on a week-by-week basis. What I'm worried about now, and Q, tell me what you think of this, is we're only halfway through his rookie year. I almost fear that Caleb recognizes the shortcomings of the guys that are telling him what to do at this point. He has, a posse, a circle around him that is telling him, hey, this ain't it. These guys ain't it. You're going to have a new coaching staff next year. And now all of a sudden, he's forcing these type of throws because he hates losing. So all these, these game-breaking type of plays that he's just flat out missing on right now, which he made routinely in college. He won a Heisman Award. Now, instead of making them naturally, instead of just mentally knowing what to do, I think he's trying to, because he hates losing so much, he's trying to mentally force himself to carry the coaching staff. When really, in actuality, when it comes to a rookie quarterback, you want the opposite. You want the coaching staff to slowly build up the quarterback. And again, we're only halfway through the season. After the game today, one of the reporters asked, were you surprised you were still in the game with 25 seconds left? And Caleb very nonchalantly was just like, that's not my decision. It's just normally if I had heard that question and I had to project how Caleb Williams would have answered that, I would have guessed something along the lines of, I'm always looking to be on the football field and trying to get better. And every moment I'm on the football field is a learning moment, blah, blah, blah. There's none of that. It was simply, just throwing it at the coaches. And that's incredibly dangerous because he's such a good prospect. And I feel like slowly I'm seeing what could be the worst case scenario for Caleb Williams. If you had asked me in the season preview episode, what's the worst case scenario for Caleb Williams? I think I just ironed it out with this rant I just went on.
Yeah. Worst case would be coaching staff is just not good and it's creating a toxic environment within the Bears locker room. It's creating a, DJ Moore going on the score and talking about things that they would prefer to stay internal. It's, Cole Kmet going out there and talking about other players' work ethic in practice. That's the type of stuff that can really breed animosity within a locker room and create a bad situation for a young quarterback to be trying to grow in, because who do you trust? Who can you trust within that? Who do you believe in? Who can you believe in when games are going this way? Like, how often are you just having to go rogue on stuff, and how will that impact your relationships with the coaches that you're working with every single day? Like, at some point, there's going to be a conversation around this of, if Caleb was so good, why'd the coach get fired?
Yeah.
It's coming. It's going to happen. And it's going to be on him to prove that is like valid, because you look at former number one picks whose coaches have gotten fired. I mean, there's Jared Goff. He didn't really work out with the Rams long term. He ended up getting to the Lions and turning it all around. But like, Jeff Fisher got fired there. Goff was awful as a rookie. McVay comes in. He was awesome. And then he kind of turned back into a pumpkin. And then he went to the Lions and worked it back out and is doing really well now. But like, outside of that, talking maybe Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston got Lovie Smith got fired after 1 year. I don't remember if Mariota had it happen to him, but like, it's a short list, and it's not really an impressive list of number one picks whose coach got fired after their first year. Now, it is a different circumstance because most of those number one picks, their team earned it, right? The Bears didn't earn it. They got it without giving up significant assets for it, like relative to like the Rams trade up for number one for Goff, but they gave up a ton to do it. Bears didn't give up a ton. So that does make it a little different, but I just want to get it out there. That conversation's coming whenever Eberflus gets fired, and it's going to be on Caleb to prove that he's not those guys. And I hate that that's the welcome to the NFL season for a guy. That toxicity, that I don't want to say despair, but like that level of having the idea in your head at all that your coach got fired because you weren't good enough is going to wear on someone. And that's going to be painted as the picture in the media.
But my question is, so Q, you're the GM. You are Ryan Poles tomorrow morning. Do you make a change now? Or do you wait? Do you wait another couple weeks? Or C, do you wait till the end of the season? Because I see positives and negatives for each one, right? I on one end, if you fire Eberflus tomorrow, who do you have developing Caleb Williams over the next couple of weeks? Like, when at that point you're giving up, you're saying it's a lost season. And so you really don't know where the mindset of a DJ Moore, Keenan Allen at that point is probably trying to figure out where he's going to be playing next year. Like, he just wants to stay healthy and get another contract. But if you keep Eberflus, the pressure's still on. At that point, the mindset still is, hey, you're competing for this division. And then when you have weeks like the back-to-back weeks we just had, the pressure's there. That's when the pressure continues to pile on. And then you start worrying, is Caleb developing bad habits that he never displayed before?
Yeah, I mean, so
go ahead.
I think you have a very strong case to fire Eberflus tomorrow, if I'm being frank. The question then becomes like who takes over though? Because Shane Waldron is the clear answer in my mind. And I don't know that I want Shane Waldron running the team.
There's not a single Bears fan who would be
right. But who else?
They would get the notification on their phone. The Chicago Bears fire Matt Eberflus. You would hear a roar of improvement. And then there'd be a follow-up text. Shane Waldron named interim head coach. And people would be throwing their phones at the ground again.
Right. But so like what, you're going to do Eric Washington, so now you don't have a defensive coordinator? Like that seems tough to me. And the entire question of if Eric Washington becomes your head coach, does that change anything offensively? Because in my mind, if you're saying that firing Eberflus is going to help the offense, it's because Matt Eberflus is restraining the offense somehow. Is Eric Washington going to be different than that? I don't know. I mean, that's the type of thing that internally they probably know. Ryan Poles probably has a pretty good idea of what the offense will look like under Eric Washington versus Matt Eberflus. But if that's your reasoning for doing it, I don't see what you're really gaining by doing it externally. But if you think the offense is the problem, you're saying Shane Waldron's going to be our head coach, then Shane Waldron now has free reign to run his offense the way that he sees fit, which maybe he is right now, maybe he's not. And outside of that, I mean, Richard Hightower, special teams coordinator, is typically a guy who does become, will be moved up into a head coaching spot because they're used to dealing with a lot of different players at a lot of different positions. But Hightower isn't the most seasoned NFL coach, which makes me question that idea a little bit. I think he only has a handful of years as a special teams coordinator. Let's see here. So he's got, he 2017 through 2021, he was San Francisco special teams coordinator. So what is that, 5 years? And then 2022 to now with the Bears. So 7-8 years as special teams coordinator. So maybe you'd consider Hightower. I think that could make some sense. But I mean, outside of that, you come up really dry on guys who are going to take over as the head coach here. Because, I mean, who knows? Maybe this was by design, but like Eberflus' staff doesn't really have a whole lot of guys who I feel that confident in doing it, aside from Eric Washington.
It's wild. I pitched the question to you with my own mindset being, you got to move on from Eberflus. But as you so eloquently, laid it out for me, I think I changed my mind. I think you're right. Again, I don't want Caleb spending half of his rookie year against playing under a head coach and an offensive system that clearly is not ready to be a head coach or an offensive coordinator. So that's why I actually think Bear Truth 9 in the chat might have a point here. You can't just stand pat. At this point, everyone's pointing at the coaching staff, waiting for something to happen. What is one of the underperforming units that we have? It is that offensive line. It is our run game. Maybe you send a message first and foremost. Fire the offensive line coach. Send a message to the rest of the team. Hey, look, we're trying. Just show some sort of effort that you're not just complacent and letting the culture rock. And that could buy you another few weeks with Eberflus and Waldron. Look, I don't think Waldron is a bad offensive coordinator. I think he's just merely average. I don't think Eberflus is a bad head coach. I think he's maybe average. He's an elite defensive coordinator. He's a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. I just don't know if it takes more than knowing X's and O's to be a good head coach capable of winning a Super Bowl. And I don't know if Eberflus has those intangibles outside the X's and O's. So what I don't think, and what you just kind of elaborated on, is I don't know if you have the guys behind him that can keep. I mean, we all agree at this point, right? The season's pretty much out the window. This season right now is to, okay, just help continue Caleb, his development to eventually be the quarterback that can get us to a Super Bowl. I'm now, and this is just within the last couple minutes or so, convinced myself to not necessarily get rid of Luce, buy a couple more weeks, maybe another month of the season, make some sort of change, whether it's the offensive line coordinator or another positional coach, something to show not just us fans are dumb, right? Like, we don't matter ultimately, but those players in the locker room, the ones who are already kind of openly questioning to the media, on the radio shows that they're on, that they're not exactly sure the coaching staffs are making the right decisions. Those are the guys that need to be convinced. Because in my opinion, today happened because of the coaching decisions from last week. And I think a lot of that marinated all week long. And in my opinion, that team gave up after that last touchdown in the first half. At that point, you can kind of see, okay, these guys really, we're in trouble here. And, you don't want your team to mentally check out halfway through the season, and especially this prodigy of a quarterback that you have.
Yeah. I mean, so my first thought, again, what Bear Truth 9 put in the comments to fire the O-line coach, my first thought is, well, who's going to start coaching the O-line? Who's going in the film room with them, who's talking technique with them, who's working with them in practice about, their leverage positions, where their arms are going, what their assignments are on blitz pickups. But Bears do have an assistant offensive line coach who was the offensive line coach last year.
Not to cut you off real quick, but I would say it's like the guy who's doing that right now, he's not very good at his job. We just talked about this, the offensive, when we compared the offensive line to Arizona's, right? Like, talent-wise, like, I get what you're saying, and I should let you finish because I think you're going to circle back around this topic and make more sense. But the guy right now, if you have to fire someone and move on from someone, I get what you're saying. Who's going to teach?
Right, someone's got to do the job, and they got to know the players like intimately.
Right, but the guy who's doing that job right now stinks at it. So maybe you can't really downgrade much more than the guy who's already doing it.
Right, and they do have an assistant O-line coach who last year was the Titans' offensive line coach. Titans' offensive line last year was awful, but regardless, the talent level was pretty low too. But you do have a guy in-house who has experience being an offensive line coach in the NFL and who knows these players in every meeting with them, working with them on the practice field. I do think firing Chris Morgan is an option, is a real option here after seeing that, because I don't think this guy has, the assistant has ties to Chris Morgan. I don't know if he has ties to Waldron. I'm not sure who he goes, why he is with the Bears, but there's something there that you can say, hey, he can do the job. He's capable. He knows our guys, like, which is really always my question about firing a head coach, is who's replacing them, because it's not always an easy answer. And when there's not an easy answer, the odds of it happening are low. Like we were saying with Flues, if Flues got fired, I think it has to be Waldron who takes over, because that's your only real choice of improving where you're worried about. Unless, like we said, Eberflus is restraining the offense and Eric Washington won't be doing that. That's the only other way that it makes sense. But outside of that, like, we're between a rock and a hard place with this team right now. It's rough. It's ugly. We lost 29-9 to the freaking Cardinals, who Cardinals are fine. Over on my other podcast, Shaving Points podcast, every year we choose a team that we are not sleeping on. We just talk NFL bets. That's all we do, is we go through every game, what games we like. And every year before the season starts, after going through every single roster, we choose the team that we are not sleeping on because they're going to be feisty as hell. That was the Arizona Cardinals this year. I expected this team to be feisty. I expected them to battle and win some football games, be around 500, but really good up against the spread. I didn't expect them to win 29-9 against the Bears. Like, that's a bad look.
Not score a single touchdown, Q. Like, that's just unacceptable. In every, this is a team that prided itself on routinely keeping opponents under 21 points.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave up 21 in the first half today. And again, that's what has me worried, that we've held strong for so long. But at some point, I'm worried that all of a sudden the bottom just falls out. And instead of it taking a long time and progressively, it may have happened this past week. And, it's not like the schedule's getting any easier. We've got the toughest schedule in the NFL for the remaining part of the season. And a season that started off so promising, winning 4 of your first 6 games. Is there a chance all of a sudden we end the season with 6 wins? I mean, right?
I mean, you gotta think they can beat the Patriots next week, but
how confident
it's
are
all
you?
in question right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, talent-wise, sure, but you know what? Who else we were more talented than?
The Cardinals.
The Cardinals.
The Commanders. People will fight me on that, but I'll say it tooth and nail in my coffin. Bears are a more talented team. Bears are just the worst coach team. I mean, there is a universe where the Bears win one more game the rest of the way.
Are you saying the one win comes against New England?
Yeah.
See, and again, I'm telling you, there's a universe where we don't even win that game.
Yeah. I mean, so my thought process, if they lose that one, I think they will win. So, maybe they beat the Seahawks in Chicago or something, or maybe the Vikings take a turn for the worse. They're on Sunday Night Football right now. Last I saw, they were down 7-0, nearing half. So I think there's something, they will find something.
Right.
I don't think they lose out, but it's possible, and it hurts. It sucks, and I hope that this is the first time all year where I am willing to consider, if the Bears suddenly get hot and start winning games, I'm still not sure I want Eberflus back, and that is not something that is not even a territory I've been willing to go to until now.
Yeah, I think mentally I've checked out on him. I was almost there. I was 80% of the way there at the conclusion of last week. But today, I've moved on from him. At this point, I don't think he's the guy that I mentioned earlier who, it has the whole package to win you a Super Bowl. For me now, I'm just at the point of, can we at least wait till the offseason? Or, because we don't have a replacement, as you mentioned, can we keep Flus on long enough that he can kind of, what's a term? Just hold steady, basically not be a detriment to Caleb Williams developing moving forward. Whereas I think if we move on from Flus and we put in something completely new to Caleb Williams for half of his rookie year, and keep in mind, he's worked all offseason under Flus and Waldron, right? So he's still learning this whole process, and to have to start over now immediately, what does he do the rest of the season? And then, by the way, he's going to be learning a new one next offseason. So you're talking about 3 new systems in his first calendar year of being a quarterback for the Chicago Bears. And I don't care how talented you are. I don't care how mentally strong you are. That's a tough task for anybody.
It really is, and it's depressing. Let's hope they turn something around. Let's hope they give us something to be excited about here. I mean, these shows are going to be tough to do if it keeps going down this route. But, Sunny, what do you say we get out of here with the good old bear down and call it?
It's not going to be as enthusiastic as the last couple of weeks, but we're still going to be watching the games. So, Bears fan for life, no matter how badly they treat us. So, bear down, Q.
All right, bear down.